This month's Where Did the Road Go is brought to you by three amazing people, Super Inframan, Allison Cook, and 36 Dingo. If you want to become a patron or a sponsor, go to wheredidtheroadgo.com. And now our show.
Transmission start. Welcome to Where Did the Road Go? Join us as we wander off the path and explore lost history, consciousness, the paranormal, unexplained mysteries, alternative thought, and much more. We are present on the web at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Now here is your host, Seriah.
Welcome to this edition of Where Did the Road Go? And this is the continuation of last week's mega roundtable, super roundtable, except without Taylor. So we have A.P Strange, we have Super Inframan, we have Pill Junkie, and we have Christopher Ernst.
Good evening.
Hello, hello.
Hey. Happy New Year.
And I think Taylor was the only other person we had last week that's not here tonight.
Correct.
So it's only slightly less super than it was last.
Right, yes. Yeah. Adjust for the amount of super.
The same amount of super, the less amount of Taylor.
Yeah, okay. There we go. So, Red Pill, where did we leave off? How far in the year did we even get?
We barely scratched the surface, I guess.
So what's next on your list from the Daily Grail?
Yeah, and by the way, after we had our first part of the end of the year review, Greg Taylor at the Daily Grail did a list containing 150 news, ranging from, UFOs, conspiracies, history, science, space, and I invite anyone listening to check it out. You'll spend hours and hours finding a lot of good content, and but getting back to our particular list, I think we barely talked about UFOs last time. With the exception of mentioning notable passings like the death of John Lear and Betty Andreasson.
Yeah.
And by the way, another notable figure that passed was scientist, astronomer Frank Drake, famous for the
Drake equation.
The Drake equation, that tries to, I don't know if calculate, I guess tries to have an educated guess with regards to the possible number of advanced civilizations in our galaxy.
Yeah.
As much as you hear about the Drake equation, I totally missed that he died in the last year.
Yeah, I think in October or something like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not even been that long ago. It seems like surely we would have seen that more, but that may also be me not seeing it more.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that's just, a guess based on what limited knowledge we have, that equation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's better than anyone else had done.
Better than anyone else has done. And, even these things where it's always a good place to start.
Yeah.
Yes. Because even if it might be something that we would disagree with a lot, we'd still be like, well, this is a good place for us to, pull an educated guess from and then start messing around with, our own hypotheses and thoughts and beliefs to plug in too.
It was a starting point. And obviously, aside from the equation itself, I think that the value of Drake's career was in pretty much kickstarting humanity's attempt to actually reach out and contact advanced civilizations using radio telescope technology. He was the first one to send a message through the Arecibo radio telescope in Puerto Rico. Obviously, he didn't get a reply. That wasn't the point. The point is that to try to show that in principle it was possible. And he also was instrumental in setting up SETI.
Oh, okay.
He was kind of like one of the godfathers of SETI in a way. So he was very much invested in trying to find ETs using known scientific methods. Obviously, that kind of person is also very adverse to the idea of UFOs as evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence.
Right.
I had no idea he was instrumental in SETI, though, either. SETI was a lot of fun in college. And I'm sure, I say college, around the 2000s, you could always download the screensaver that would like run information for them. Did anybody else mess around with that?
SETI at home? Yeah. I remember having it on my computer.
Yep. Yeah. That was always one of those things that, think about the WOW signal and a couple other things. And,
well, I mean, for as much as I think there is a valid argument for, the issues with SETI, there is still something, I think, in maybe the naive wonder of it, at least at that point when I had it on. Usually I think it was in college, I had in grad school that I had it running. I was a big fan of that. The adaptation of Carl Sagan's book Contact with Jodie Foster. I still really like that film.
So do I.
Oh yeah.
Most people I know hated it at the time, and I was like, "That was awesome."
Yeah.
I thought it was great too, and that's one that for us in our interest in all of this, and the idea that the phenomena is always elusive, and to have her, Jodie Foster's character come back, and of course the tape is blank, and the only thing that they really have to go on is her word.
Right.
It was blank for longer than it should have been.
Right.
They leave that hint in there.
Right. Yeah, it had the runtime of what
she experienced.
She was away.
Yeah, the runtime of her experience. Yeah.
Yeah, not the orb, or I call it an orb, being dropped through the.
But so I'd heard so many people be like, "Oh, big deal! The alien was her dad," and it's like that's not what that was.
I mean, it really was ahead of its time in the sense that it was, at least I think for the public, and that it was presenting this idea of information for a non-traditional type of communication device being put together, which is, and not that it really says what it's doing, but it leaves it open. Maybe it was a consciousness projection machine. Maybe it was actually projecting her physically, but just her, I think that's probably what it was leaning to. But everything, there was this idea of, the idea of really showing that technology that's very far advanced does seem mystical or magical. And it also didn't, even though it was very much a hard sci-fi book and film, I think that it allowed in this the sort of wonder of mysticism, which I always appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely. Red Pill, what's next on your list before we end up talking movies the entire time?
Right.
Well, now that we're touching upon astronomy, it's a good opportunity to talk about the announcement that NASA did, saying that they too were going to investigate UAPs, independently of the office whose name escapes me. I think the acronym is ARROW. The office that is part of the Pentagon in charge of studying and analyzing UAP reports presented by military personnel. But NASA, very surprisingly said, yeah, we're going to do that too, on our own. Now, obviously, it's going to be a very limited study. They don't have the resources to conduct a massive study. I think that they're going to do some kind of like meta-analysis of stuff they already have in their records to try to see if there's something there. Well, at least we can agree that it's a change in attitude, and that is positive, I think, for the most part, even though that I don't have a lot of I'm not very optimistic with the prospect of they actually finding something,
or really acknowledging things.
Yes.
Like Vallee said when he was working at the observatory, and he found them destroying tracks of, data on unexplained objects. It's like, they can go through all that old stuff, but did they keep it if they saw something weird?
Yeah. And last year, I also wrote an article for the Daily Grail talking about how in the 1970s, when President Jimmy Carter came into office, he had the idea of actually, opening up UFO classified files. And also, he made a formal request through one of his associates to NASA to actually go and conduct a new study on UFOs, which hadn't been done after the University of Colorado released the infamous Condon report,
right?
The one that closed the chapter on Blue Book and officially gave the United States an excuse to stop paying attention to UFOs because, as the Condon report concluded, there weren't, meritorious of analysis, and there wasn't any, in their mind, any evidence of, extraterrestrial visitation on planet Earth. But now, like I said, back in the time of Jimmy Carter, the NASA honchos resisted the presidential request, and they found, a good excuse to refuse to conduct a UFO study. And that's actually something that Jacques Vallee mentions at the beginning of his book, Messengers of Deception, how he had an interview with someone, I think that was, I don't remember, it was the White House Scientific Committee or scientific advisors, or someone actually from NASA. But yeah, he was very, skeptical about it. Like one of the things that he mentions in the book is that, well, NASA actually wasn't really ideal for a UFO study because nobody has proven that UFOs represent, some kind of like origin from outside the Earth, so not really NASA's provenance. But back in those days, I guess because of the things like the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, people wanted answers, and they assumed that the most logical thing was to ask those answers about UFOs to NASA, because NASA is about studying space, and the most popular conception is that UFOs come from outer space.
Well, sure. Where else would they come from? I mean, that just makes sense.
Mm-hmm. I'm so jaded about this stuff that with NASA announcing that, I'm like, it's just a way to control the narrative.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, totally.
I mean, they probably don't want to give up on that, too, in case it becomes something that is, fruitful. They'd be like, we were here from the beginning. Remember, it's us, NASA.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially if it is an opportunity to ask for more funds.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Well, it was it earlier this week that the head of NASA was talking about, we're really in a space race with China now because, he's hyping up fears that China is going to land on the moon and somehow claim territory there.
Yeah, claim the moon
so
is
we have
theirs.
to get there. Yeah. So we have to get there first again.
They're going to kick our flag down, man.
Yep. It's going to be like Superman 4, we'll have to put it back up.
Man, I haven't seen Superman 4 since I was a kid.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Probably better not to.
It's pretty corny. I did watch it more recently than I should have. Yeah.
And we're back to movies again.
Yep.
What's next, Red Pill?
What's next? Okay, well, let's keep talking about UFOs. Back in the middle of 2022, we had the congressional hearing on UFOs, in which some members of Congress were demanding the UAP task force, some answers about, what was going on, what kind of knowledge or information or evidence they possessed. And it was, I don't know if you guys actually saw the proceedings on video. I actually saw the whole thing.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. I wrote for it on the Daily Grail, and it was an interesting thing. Obviously, the position of the people in charge of the task force was clear. There isn't any evidence of that UFO represents some kind of like non-human intelligence, but they still acknowledge that there are a few reports that are hard to explain.
Yeah.
And there's also the idea that the Congress men or people weren't really that insistent in demanding answers because after the public proceedings, there was like behind closed doors secret proceeding in which supposedly they received more information that was classified. And there was a lot of that, allusions during the hearing. But I think that what's safe to say is that is not that these politicians were shown actual, really juicy evidence of UFOs, but more like what seems to be happening is that the task force was more preoccupied with trying to protect American technological assets, the new radar systems and the new technologies that have allowed pilots and aviators to actually detect these objects when they are running, flying maneuvers. And it seems to be the case like the task force is more interested in trying to protect these assets, especially from, adversaries like China that we're talking about just recently, because some of those UFO reports, it's clear that they seem to be nothing more than drones, probably controlled by Chinese spies or maybe spies from other factions that are trying to obtain, technological electronic signatures that could be useful. We're trying to elucidate, just what kind of technology American planes are running with.
Yeah, I think that's very true.
And that's, what much of that comes down to is that so much of this stuff is our tech, and, they're never going to tell us about it, not for another 20 or 30 years, when they have stuff that's way beyond the tech they have now.
I mean, there is this idea that many people think that the Tic Tacs and other reports were actually American secret technology. But
right.
At least on the hearings, the people who were answering the questions, they deny that. They didn't say that it was like they called like blue objects. Like saying that it is ours, but we cannot disclose it because it is classified information. That wasn't the position that has been taken by the people that were answering these questions. Like obviously they could be lying, and when they are trying to protect classified information, I think they are allowed to lie under oath.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, I have my doubts. That, and this is something that even pilots like Ryan Graves, who was interviewed by Joe Rogan and Lex Friedman this year on their podcast. It seems that at first Navy pilots were certain that these objects were, secret spy planes or drones. But gradually, as the UFO encounters increased, they began to have their doubts. And now you listen to Ryan Graves. I think that he is very much on the position that these objects are not, man-made.
Right. One thing that is interesting to me, the way the military-industrial complex, whether it be like Lockheed Martin or Boeing or something like that, can sort of be compartmentalized with how they develop technology. So, you would be able to have the deniable plausibility of saying, it's not ours, but you're really just saying it's not the military's, even though it is, right? That's always a caveat I put out there. I'm like, every time in the hearings, these guys would deny certain things like that. I'm like, man, even if you weren't lying to protect classified information, you may not actually know because this is corporate property being developed for the military, and until it's finished, the communication's a little bit constrained and contracted in a way.
And a lot of that stuff goes through corporate entities as opposed to governmental agencies, just for that reason.
Exactly. Yep.
Exactly. And
I mean, one of the most interesting things that happened during those hearings is that one of the congressmen actually submitted a copy of the infamous memo at where's the name? The Wilson Davis memo. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that.
Wilson memo, yeah.
Yeah, we did a short episode on here about that.
Mm-hmm. So that was something that was talked about, and I guess among those people in the corridors of Washington, it's safe to say that because of the people that they have talked to, like people that were involved with To the Stars in the past, Chris Mellon, Eric Davis, Louis Elizondo. Probably some of those congressmen believe that there may be some classified black projects dealing with UFO information or maybe even UFO technology. That's why one of the last UFO stories of the year was this signing of this defense bill that was sent to President Joe Biden, and he signed it. And supposedly, well, this is something that is kind of like outside my expertise, but there are people who are knowledgeable in matters of laws and the writings of laws, that in some of those clauses of lines of in that bill apparently stipulate some kind of like provisions or some kind of like opportunity for whistleblowers to come forward and share what they supposedly may or may not know about these secret programs, even if they are like restricted by non-disclosure agreements and oaths that they may have taken under different administrations. So there is that idea that there is a whistleblower clause in that bill, and that added to the UFO report that was supposedly going to be released by Halloween of 2022, but as to this day, the day of this recording, the report has not been released to the public yet, and nobody knows really why. This is why is this report being delayed for so long without nobody really giving a lot of information about it.
That I didn't know about.
Mm-hmm. Apparently it's people who have read the report, or insiders, anonymous insiders, say there are maybe one of the reasons why the report was delayed was because the task force office, the ARO, was receiving hundreds of UFO reports from military pilots, which is good. Means that they are receiving new information, and the military personnel are now encouraged to share their sightings, to chain of command, instead of keeping quiet because of the ridicule factor that used to reign over these circumstances, like in decades past. Commander Fravor, what happened to them when they just arrived to the Nimitz, to the USS Nimitz, after having their encounter with the Tic Tac, and they were greeted with the music of the X-Files.
Yeah. Well, of course, everything goes back to the X-Files.
Yeah, of course. So there's that.
That's the go-to with the media. Got to play the X-Files music.
Got to play the X-Files. If you're going to mention that, and we're talking about government connections, do y'all want to mention the Calvine photo now, or bring it up later?
It doesn't matter.
Let's talk about the Calvine. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that is probably, to me, one of the most interesting UFO stories of 2022, that after 32 years, this legendary photograph that supposedly had been hanging on the office of Nick Pope, his MOD desk, and was supposedly an incredibly stunning evidence of an actual UFO. Just came to the surface last year. The famous Calvine photograph that was supposedly taken in Scotland by two hikers that observed this large diamond-shaped metal-looking object that apparently also was being, I don't know if escorted or being followed or chased by a fighter jet, a Harrier, if I'm not mistaken. So the photograph is now easily available, easily located. Or is easy to find on the internet. And right. I don't know, would like to know, you guys, what is your opinion of the supposedly great UFO photo from the 1990s?
Well, first of all, weren't there supposedly a few of them and only one got released or something like that?
Yeah, that's a story. Yeah. The story is that these guys took more than one photograph, and apparently they released everything to the MOD.
Yeah. There's also the first thing I remember when I think I was one of the ones when we did a show on this or did something, we talked about it.
We did a short on this,
degree, a shorty on this. Yeah, is that when you search it, the thing that pops up more than the actual photo is this recreation somebody did at some point, which looks almost photorealistic, but is not the photograph. So if anybody is looking for this and you see a photo that has mountains that are in the bottom, that's not the one. You have to look for one that has a fence on the bottom.
Yes.
Anyway, and it looks obviously like an older photo. It's one of those things that without seeing it in truly full definition, because I feel like everything that I'm seeing is some lesser print of it, it's hard to tell if it's a reflection in a pond or if it is indeed a double pyramid being followed by a jet.
Well, the one thing I was fairly interesting is someone on Reddit took a picture from that pretty much exact location and compared it, and that's actually a mountaintop.
What is?
What looks like the UFO is the top of a mountain, and it's shrouded in clouds.
Interesting.
And then it's like mist, and we're seeing a reflection or something?
No, it's just the peak is coming out of the clouds.
Huh.
And because they laid up, another picture taken in that exact same spot against this picture, and they're like, look, you can see that's the tip of the mountain.
There were a lot of people trying to debunk the photograph. Yeah, I've heard the theory that it was a reflection on a pond, that it was the top of the mountain, and another explanation was that someone just hung a Christmas decoration, a star, that the one like the ones that you put on top of a Christmas tree, and they somehow hung it horizontally, and that's what you get. But I don't know. To my mind, those are just possibilities, but it's not definitive. As far as I know, this photograph is still an unknown, still not being officially debunked. And also another interesting thing is that Nick Pope is playing his usual, well, I can neither confirm nor deny.
Yeah.
But this is actually the actual Calvine photograph, So he's playing that game.
It's always fun when he does that.
Yeah.
All right, what's next on your list there, Mr. Red Pill?
What else could we talk about? Well, we could also talk about Avi Loeb trying to find what he thinks is a crashed extraterrestrial probe on the bottom of the ocean in Papua New Guinea.
I only heard about this recently.
Well, he's been talking about that for almost an entire year. I don't know.
Where's the location? I forget.
Papua New Guinea. Yeah.
It's Papua New Guinea. Okay, yeah.
Papua New Guinea. Yeah. which also actually reminds me of that very famous UFO case from the 1950s. Remember the story of Father Gillis or Father Gills, I think.
Oh yeah.
You know, that how they were seeing this like flying structure with what they thought were people on top of it, doing some kind of repairs. And the people back in the beach, they were doing like attempts to communicate with them, you know, like waving their hands and something, and they actually got a response.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's and the most interesting thing about that case is that for the longest time, Father Gills was certain that it wasn't something out of the ordinary. You know, he thought it was some kind of like secret, advanced flying machine from the Americans.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the first place my brain went when you mentioned Papua New Guinea too is the Ropin sightings out there that are supposed to be bioluminescent, where they would see the lights going, you know, in and out of the water and what have you.
Yeah, and also another interesting thing about the Father Gillis case is that even before they actually had the sightings, it seems that there were already high strangeness events happening around his mission. This is something that actually
I didn't know that.
I'm not sure if I think Vallee talks about it in his book, in one of his Forbidden Science books. But yeah, the idea that one night someone knocked at the door of Father Gill's home. He went to answer the door, and there was nobody there. And you will say, well, maybe, you know, some of the kids played a prank on him, but it's kind of unlikely because he was such a revered figure. So it sounds almost like there was like high strangeness activity that it was boiling up even prior to the actual event. Or I should we say events, because I think that the object was seen at least 2 nights in a row, if I'm not mistaken.
It happened. I do remember that. It happened like 2 nights in a row, and I think that it was, you know, like completely repeatable, and like the men, quote unquote, from the top of it, you know, were waving to them and stuff like that.
Yeah. So, well, getting back to Avi Loeb, I think that Project Galileo's main goal right now is to try to prepare this mission or this expedition to try and locate what seems to be a metallic meteorite of from outside the solar system, and Love, I don't know for why he thinks there's a high probability that it is of artificial origin. I don't know, maybe something to do with the trajectory that the object displayed prior to crashing into the ocean. But it will be interesting to see if we actually find something.
Well, and that's one of those things, I put that up there with the Cydonia stuff. Like, if there's even the slightest chance, go for it. You know, like I never understood the whole NASA thing with like, oh, this looks like a face. Well, we know there's no life on Mars, so we're not going to look there. It's like, right. But look, you know, there's a slight chance that these could be artificial structures. Wouldn't that be the game changer? Oh, you don't want the game changer, do you?
Right.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
All right, what's next on the list, Red Pill?
What's next on the list?
Of things that happened in 2022, because apparently we're in a different year now.
It doesn't feel like it yet.
I'm pretty sure it's still 2020, I'm telling you.
Yeah, exactly. Another interesting thing that happened is that NASA, for the first time, attempted and successfully managed to crash a probe into an asteroid in order to try to deflect its trajectory. And this is something that is very important because it could prove useful in the future to try to protect our planet from some kind of like one of those giant killer asteroids that wiped out the dinosaurs, or maybe even the megafauna in North America like 15,000 years ago. So this is the first time that something like this was ever attempted. It was a very modest exercise, but nevertheless, it's exciting because this is something that we should have done decades ago. It's really inconceivable how naked and how impotent we are to all those giant killer rocks that are just zipping around, orbiting near our planet.
Yeah.
I've always wondered if we've talked about this on the show some, the reason we are so resistant to talking about cataclysms happening at different times is we kind of like to bury our head in the sand about it. It's one thing if it was 65 or I forget the one before that with the asteroid that hit. But, if we avoid the topic entirely because we don't want to think about it because we seem fairly powerless to do anything about a meteor that might be coming at Earth or I say meteor, asteroid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we had Tunguska in 1908.
That's true.
And we had the one that also hit in Russia just a few years ago that killed a bunch of people.
That's right.
It wasn't Siberia. I can't remember where that one was, but Russia just
Chelyabinsk, something like that. I don't remember the actual name.
Russia's like a magnet for these things, apparently, but it also is a very large span of land. So, but imagine if Tunguska had hit London or New York City or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would have been world changing.
Yes. So,
I mean, that was a small enough one to burn up in the atmosphere, I think, too, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was just kind of.
Yeah.
Well,
The impact.
It looks like it exploded in the that's
right.
Yeah, like an airburst, right? Is that what they call it?
Yeah. So that wasn't even an impact, right? So that's the thing is like if you had an actual impact, that would be even worse, I would think.
Yeah, that went off more like
absolutely.
That one went off more like a nuclear bomb, according to the spread, like the devastation pattern, like where it blew up above the surface, which is why they never found a crater.
Yeah, it like blew all the tops off the trees and stuff.
Yeah, but even the way it knocked them down, like it was more on one side than the other, rather than a circular sort of situation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think the most bizarre thing about that too was I think directly under it there was a patch of trees that were largely unaffected.
Yes, that again, yeah,
which is just bizarre. Yeah, like how do you explode in such a way that there's not force going out in every direction, even minimally? Did they hear that all the way in London, or was it the light that they saw all the way in London?
Oh,
the light.
I think it was the light.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think it was Charles Berlitz wrote a book on it and was saying that there were other sightings of this thing and that it changed direction as it was coming in toward the Earth.
Wow.
Because if it wasn't him, it was someone else like Charles, who was just, speculating, this could have been a UFO coming in and, just self-destructed or whatever before it hit the planet. But because I guess he was able to find a couple of articles suggesting it was like moving one direction over China or Mongolia, and then it switched and moved northward towards Siberia.
Wow.
It might have just been the inability of people to track it effectively with the equipment at the time, too.
Right, yes. 1908 is a big technological leap from where we are now.
Mm-hmm. But, there's also the people that say it was actually Nikola Tesla's death ray.
That's my favorite, by the way.
Yeah.
Probably not the most likely, but it is absolutely my favorite version of that.
It's a very fun one to consider for a minute. Yeah.
Yeah.
Was he in Europe then, or was he hadn't gone to Colorado yet? I don't think.
Not by 1908, I don't think.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was in New Jersey or New York.
Yeah.
Something like that. So,
New
Jersey probably. Right. The Warden Cliff Tower.
Oh, yeah, up in Buffalo or Niagara Falls, one of the two.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that was a little earlier, but maybe. He was, I don't know. I like the idea of him just kind of flipping a switch somewhere on the East Coast and then this happening and him just kind of being like, I'm going to abandon that one. That one's not ready for showtime just yet.
You're like, whoops. Okay.
And if I remember, Tunguska didn't kill anyone.
Oh, it's a remote area.
Yeah.
I think a few people were injured. Right?
Yeah. Like
Yeah,
people
they
got
were,
thrown off their
like-
feet and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, by the past.
Yeah.
But yeah, a super remote area from what I understand. Like there were villages kind of near it, but
Yeah, it hit in the perfect place to not kill anyone.
Yeah, that's the thing. Obviously, that's kind of like makes you wonder if it's actually something other than the most parsimonious explanation that it was just a comet.
Yeah.
Because we've been so lucky,
Yeah,
at least
we
for
really
the last
have.
10, 15,000 years with those, killer objects from outer space.
well, there's a pretty good likelihood that something from space would hit water, right? Because there's a lot of ocean. So
Yeah.
Yeah, but even if it hits water, if it's a big enough rock, it can, create all sorts of health. Remember that the Chicxulub asteroid that killed the dinosaurs, it landed on water, near the Yucatan Peninsula.
Oh, yeah. A big enough asteroid is going to create worldwide tidal waves, volcanic activity, earthquakes. It's a world-ending event.
yeah.
Yeah.
No matter where it lands. So, yeah, the fact that NASA was able to actually alter the course of that asteroid, right?
Mm-hmm, yes.
Yeah, they were. Yep.
Well, I think it's a technological marvel. I mean, just imagine what goes into figuring out how to land on a moving object and then change the trajectory. It's way above my pay grade. Right?
Yeah, it's like trying to hit a flying bullet with a even smaller bullet.
Yeah.
Actually.
While you're on a moving train, because
Right.
Exactly. Something to that effect.
But
Yeah.
you have a lot of time to calculate it because that bullet's been fired a long time ago and has a long way to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least you have that.
Yeah, but I mean, you're not even merely trying to impact, like contact it. You have to actually land on it, and then isn't that what happened? Or am I thinking of something else? Didn't they land an object on the comet?
That was, I think, a different mission.
Yeah, that was a
Okay,
different
all
one.
right. I'm thinking of something else, but still, either way, both things are very impressive.
Absolutely.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, 10, 15 years ago, the idea of man-made probes landing on asteroids and comets was the provenance of science fiction, and now it's becoming more and more common. So now it's one of the actually exciting things that's been happening on the scientific fields in the last few decades.
I wish we would send some more underwater, but that's just me.
Well, that's where Avi Loeb is coming.
It's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, what's next on the list, RPJ?
Okay, let's change gears a little bit. Let's go and remember that weird ass story of the Google engineer who claimed that one of Google's artificial intelligence programs have actually turned sentient.
I vaguely remember this.
Remember the guy named Black Lemoyne?
I don't remember his name, but Google was searching for it for no particular reason when you said that.
I heard Alexa in the background.
Here you go.
Is that what it was? Oh my God. Are you talking about me?
Yeah.
It
like
knows. I can't let you do that, Seriah.
Yeah, what was the outcome of that? I think Google just dismissed him and said he was overselling it or something. Wasn't that that?
Yeah. Obviously, Google, the company, and the spokespersons does not share Blake Lemoyne's conclusions. And I think I listened to one interview with him. I don't know if it was with Duncan Trussell. Yeah, I think it was with Duncan Trussell. And it was an interesting conversation. The guy, by the way, I think he's a Discordian priest.
Oh.
So that goes to show that his way of thinking is pretty much out of left field. But his arguments were interesting nonetheless. It almost, in a way, reminded me of what happened like 500 years ago with the natives of the Americas. When the Spanish conquistadors came and they were starting to treat them like cattle, and making slaves out of them. And there were a few Europeans, religious people like Cristobal de las Casas. They were trying to argue, about against such inhumane treatment. And there were famous trials that happened in Europe in which they were trying to determine whether the American natives were actually human or not. if the American natives actually had a soul.
Right.
So there's an interesting parallel in my mind, at least, of about those discussions and now these discussions, because obviously Google has an economic interest in dismissing these claims, because they need to keep treating these programs as a commodity, as a product that can be marketable and can be profited from. But obviously that will change if the products are treated like sentient beings, which is like what Blake Lemoine was arguing for. So I think maybe 500 years from now, our artificial descendants will treat Blake Lemoine like some kind of like their digital San Cristobal de las Casas.
Yeah.
Right. Or like an early abolitionist or something like that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I have no doubt we will get that wrong. I used to be much more optimistic about the human race, but I'm like, oh, yeah, we would totally take advantage of that and make money as long as we could.
Oh, yeah, certainly. I'm also not sure if true AI is possible.
Also true.
So, what's next, Red Pill?
What else can we talk about?
Somebody did a tarot deck this year.
I heard that. Wasn't it?
Who was that guy?
Wasn't it a UFO-based tarot deck?
Something?
Yeah, some idiots try to combine the history of ufology with the ancient tarot art.
Yeah,
and it was an interesting experience. And the first part of the project has been completed, the major arcana. And hopefully in the future, I don't know if the near future, we will be able to resume the project and complete the major arcana. We still don't know how we're gonna do it. I don't know if we're gonna divide the project first into the different, how do you call this?
Houses.
The houses, or how we might pull it off, because man, those are a lot of cards that need to be drawn. It's a lot of work, and I'll be happy to do it, provided I actually find some way to sustain myself while I churn them.
Can one of the cards be the drawing of you kicking 2022 between the legs?
We actually want to somehow embed ourselves into the cards. We don't know how to do that yet, but yeah, Greg, Susan, Josh, David, and I, maybe we will be featured in some of the cards, because we have this idea that maybe if we pull it off, we might become some kind of avatars that people will summon us.
Well, you are drawing all the stuff in your own blood, right?
Almost, and I don't know if I talked to you guys about the many synchronicities that happened while doing these cards. Not just to me, but also to the team. Also, friends of ours that were contributors to the project. Well, yeah, I mean, I have no question in my mind that we are in the process of a magical experiment of some sort.
Mm. I have a trade paperback of a sort of deconstruction comic book from back in the day called Squadron Supreme, and it was written by Mark Gruenwald. And when Mark passed away, probably 10 years ago, they took his ashes and put it into the ink of the most recent printing, I think, of Squadron Supreme. So if you happen to have that version, there is potentially microscopic bits of ash that came from Mark. Not that I think that any of you guys should die and cremate yourselves, but it was one of those things where I'm like, this is kind of cool. It feels like a relic.
Yeah. And that tarot deck is shipping out when, Red Pill,
Oh, God. We're still finishing up details, arranging things with the printer. Hopefully by at least the end of this week or maybe beginning of the next, we'll finally go with the green light and begin printing the books, because I think the cards are all printed by now. We still need to go and produce the boxes in which they will be put into. But still, there are other things that we still need to finish before I actually go and make the trip to the United States to help Greg sending these to the mail and actually do what we promised, which is to sign them, for the backers in order to make them collector's items, because we are being asked time and again if we are actually going to sell these in some kind of online store or something. And definitely we're interested in doing that. We still don't know how. But in the meantime, the cards that will be sent to the backers, they will be numbered in order to make them, like the first run, to make them more unique. And also, they will be signed by each and every one of the members of the Ufology Tarot team. Greg, who is the head and the originator of the project, myself, the artist, Susan, Josh, and David, who are also participants, and they contributed with the entries for the book, which is, I think, is going to be something really unique. Because in the book, you will be able to actually contemplate the artwork in all its detail. All the things that I put there, all the things that are meant to represent aspects of the lives of the people depicted in the cards. A lot of inside baseball knowledge. And even things that I'm putting there that I'm not telling anyone, little mysteries that I'm leaving behind.
As you should.
Oh, that's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
All right, what's next up on the list?
Okay, what else? We could talk about conspiracies and how thousands of records pertaining to the assassination of John F. Kennedy were recently released.
But not all of them.
Not all of them. Yeah, there's the FBI and the CIA were still asking the Biden administration to withhold some of those records.
Got to keep some.
Here's the thing. If they told us the real story, what do they need to hide the records for?
Right.
Where they are alleging that there are still people involved in the event that are still alive, so they're still trying to protect their identities, which sounds like a pretty lame excuse, but I think personally, I think that what they're trying to hide is or protect is the fact that Lee Harvey Oswald was involved with the CIA in some capacity.
Yeah. Oh, and it was almost certainly a patsy.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, whether the CIA did it, whether the mob did it, whether it was a rogue group that did it, I always found it interesting that Russ Baker's book on the Bush's family, the Bush family, showed that, Bush Sr. there, when he was asked where he was when JFK was killed, said he didn't remember.
Yeah.
And it turns out he was speaking at a Republican convention not very far away, after being
Yes.
in Dallas that morning to meet up with some other high-ranking officials.
Yeah. I mean, I feel that it's pretty obvious that it was, the machinations of Dulles and his crew.
Yeah, and that involved Bush Sr. as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, Dulles owned everybody at that point.
So, and we may never, they're never going to admit that, because that would essentially, if you admit someone like Bush Sr. was involved with, the JFK assassination, that's someone who was vice president and president for, how many years there?
Yeah.
12 years.
Right. Yep.
So,
Yeah, 12.
And
and he was the director of the CIA for a while too.
Yeah.
Exactly.
He was
Pretty much right around the time all those MK Ultra files mysteriously disappeared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was officially director of the CIA, but a lot of people have said he was the unofficial director of the CIA for a lot longer.
Yeah.
And don't forget, it's quite possible that Barbara Bush had an affair with Aleister Crowley.
Yes, of course.
I hadn't heard that one.
Now, what was the origin of that? Didn't someone just make it up and it caught on or something?
I think it had to do with them. Like, I don't know. They would
I think
similar-
someone was trying to say that Donald Trump was their love child.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, you're right. It was Mary Trump. Or was it Mary? It wasn't. For some reason, I felt like Barbara Bush also.
No, it was Barbara Bush.
Was it Barbara Bush?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm saying the result of that union was Donald Trump, according to this.
Okay.
But I'm pretty sure it was a joke. I mean, I don't think anybody seriously thinks any of this happened.
Yeah.
I don't think Crowley was up to the task at that time of his life.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Because he died in 47. So,
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So, Red Pill, what's next on your list there?
Well, pretty much finished with the major stories of 2022. We can now talk about some other minor stories which were nevertheless interesting. Some of the things that are kind of like weird.
Okay.
Well,
Let's take a quick break then, and we'll come right back and we'll get into those. I want to pause here to thank everyone listening to this show, everyone who supports the show, rates it, talks to other people about it, everyone who's a patron, everyone who helps us out. We're almost at 10 years, and that's amazing to me. So thank you all. This is where I recommend stuff and give you some basic info. If you have any stories you'd like to share for our listener stories show, stories@wheredidtheroadgo.com is the place to send them. You can also contact us at contact@wheredidtheroadgo.com, and all our social media links and stuff are on the website at wheredidtheroadgo.com. As for recommendations, I'm going to give you a double shot here. The first one, these are both from the company Realm. These are both podcasts, and they're both fiction. The first one is called The Subjective Truth. It's a very interesting podcast. It's very weird as well, almost surreal. And it's about a guy who goes missing, and they're trying to figure out what actually happened to him. And there's a lot of little Fortean things in it that are pretty neat. And somewhere in there, they mention a movie called Two Flat Earthers Kidnap a Freemason. And I heard that, I had actually listened to the podcast Two Flat Earthers Kidnap a Freemason before listening to The Subjective Truth, and realized that The Subjective Truth came first. They must have just thrown that in the background, and somebody had the brilliant idea of this should actually exist. So not as a movie, but as a podcast, Two Flat Earthers Kidnap a Freemason is pretty damn funny. There's nothing really super esoteric about it or anything like that. It's just funny. It pokes fun at all the really ridiculous stuff in the subjects that we talk about on this show. And I definitely enjoy it a great deal. So, yeah, those are my recommendations. Subjective Truth, Two Flat Earthers Kidnap a Freemason. They're both on Realm. Again, Realm is one of those, I don't know, they were a bigger distributor of podcasts, but a lot of their stuff is pretty decent. I generally find it pretty entertaining. It's almost all fiction as far as I've heard anyway. So there you go. That's my recommendations for you podcast-wise this week. And, I should also say, if you want to mail something to me, I did finally go and establish a P.O. Box, and it's P.O. Box 444, Ovid, New York, 14521. And with that, let's get back to our conversation. So, I am here on Where Did the Road Go with Super Inframan, Red Pill Junkie, Christopher Ernst, and A.P. Strange. That's all their real names.
Yup.
Except Chris.
Except me. Yeah.
That's the only alias here.
Yeah.
And what we're doing is we've been talking about stuff that happened in 2023. Nope, 2022. Or whatever year it might be. I don't even know anymore.
2023 would be a pretty short show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really hasn't been that much yet.
We're recording this on the 4th. I'm sure stuff happened.
Yeah.
Bunch of musicians died already.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, what else do you got on your paranormal radar there, Red Pill?
Okay, so this is one that caught my eye. The story of an elephant that trampled a woman to death. And after the woman died and she was being buried, the elephant returned and trampled her grave or her coffin. And, it's like one of those stories that show how animals are far more intelligent than we usually give them credit for. And this particular animal, this particular elephant, seemed to have had some kind of deep quarrel with the woman.
But I want to know what she did,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the idea that, maybe the woman had done something to the elephant, and the elephant, the elephants never forget, right?
Well, they are extremely smart animals.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that they're so different from us, we don't really recognize that.
Mm-hmm.
They mourn their dead. They do all kinds of you could say human sort of things. But if other animals are doing them too, then maybe they're not just human traits. Maybe they're life traits. I don't know what else to call it.
Or it was, still proving that elephants are incredibly intelligent, and this one was just a real dick.
That's also possible.
It could have been a past life retribution thing as well.
There we go.
I've been wronged in a past life and came back to, really stick it to her.
Wow. I vaguely remember hearing about that. All right, what else is on that list?
Another one about animals. I don't know if you guys saw, there were a lot of really weird videos showing animals walking on circles for no apparent reason.
Yeah.
Like flocks of sheep.
Yep.
I think that, I don't know what other kind of animals.
Goats too, maybe?
Yeah, goats too. And I think one of those videos was filmed in China. And it's one of those things like, okay, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Because apparently these animals were doing that for days on end.
Yeah.
Weren't there
Similar things been recorded right before a natural disaster?
Yeah.
weren't there
weird behaviors?
geese or something doing it as well?
I think so, yeah. It kind of reminds me of, I don't know, for some reason it makes me think of those, the dancing plagues of the Middle Ages. Whole towns that were stricken by the town folks had this compulsion to start, dancing on the streets until they collapsed. Some of them, died of exhaustion. And there's even the legend has it that people believe that the reason behind the dancing fever is because of a spider that bit the victims.
Really?
And that's why, I think that is actually the origin of the word tarantella, this famous Italian dance.
Yeah.
Because they thought that it was caused by a tarantula.
Wow.
And don't they dance in a circle for that too?
Probably. So there you go.
Yeah.
That I did not know that. Yeah, the animals running in circles makes me think something's disturbing their neurology somewhere, if they're picking up cues from the environment, something's, weird with the environment.
Yep.
Magnetic fields, who knows?
Right.
Yeah. Maybe the magnetic poles are shifting.
Well, they are.
And they're affecting the animals in that way.
I mean, there's so much going on with the magnetic structures of the Earth that are just constantly changing, and animals are much more sensitive to that than we are. It still affects us. We're just not aware that it's affecting us.
Yeah, I mean, I would feel like animals are going to be the first ones that will end up being impacted by, whatever. And believe me, I'm not saying 5G, but, animals will increasingly become affected the more we're dealing with wireless technology,
Yes.
even if it just means that it's disrupting the natural magnetic field that they are attenuated to,
Yep. Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's no way we're pumping all these different electrical wireless fields and stuff into the environment and not affecting it. I mean, everything affects everything else, and stuff is made of vibration, and these are different types of vibration.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, I mean, 5G, I don't think 5G was causing COVID. I don't think it's there to kill anyone. But I don't think we fully understand the effects it has on people.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because I think
we're saturated. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Sarah.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, we're saturated in different types of EMF and electrical signals. I mean, just as, Wi-Fi proliferates. And, of course, we've been having radio signals bounce through our bodies forever. And just adding to that as our cellular networks grow, Bluetooth everywhere, there's got to be some physiological effects from that. I mean, there should be.
I mean, it is radiation,
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Weren't there some like bird die-offs too, where there were a bunch of, I don't think it was this, it might not have been this past year, but I think there were a couple news stories in the last few years of just like birds dropping out of the sky in like great numbers in a couple of places.
Mm-hmm.
The problem,
I think so, yeah.
The problem with our technology is that, it advances so fast, and on the surface it seems like it's harmless, but we don't know what the long-term consequences are. We don't know what the subtle consequences are. Because because it's subtle, because it's hard to tell, it could be damaging us in any number of ways that we may never notice. It might be 100 years from now before they go, look, they didn't think this stuff was hurting them.
I mean, the leaps in technology are, and you just have to look at it, historically, and, unless there is a massive conspiracy to cover up, the real history of the past, like 4,000 years. And I think, arguably there isn't at some degree, but we have a general idea. And at least as far as we know, there were not 8 billion people on Earth 4,000 years ago or any time between then and now.
Right.
And we jumped up quick, man. I mean, you just look at the graphs and, of the post-industrial revolution. It's insane.
Yep.
The amount of people we have and how fast technology has jumped. It's really like objectively mind-boggling. And there's going to be, we're seeing the fallout of that, because there's so much that's not known.
Yeah. What else you got there, Red Pill?
Well, as Chris has recently mentioned, the announcement was made that humanity just reached 8 billion people here, and obviously it's going to be a problem trying to maintain such a large population. One of the biggest problems ahead of humanity is in how to try to harness more energy that is sustainable, that is not created by burning fossil fuels, which is obviously causing a lot of distress in our ecosystems and warming the planet. So one of the hopeful things that happened by the end of last year was this announcement made by the U.S. Department of Energy that apparently they had done a major breakthrough in fusion research. I don't know if you guys listened to that. There were a few articles in major newspapers, including the New York Times. And I wrote a small piece about it for the Daily Grail, how apparently for the first time they actually obtained more energy out of their experiment that they put into the experiment. Although theoretically they didn't account the energy they needed in order to fire the lasers they used. They used an array of 192 lasers that were focused on a small pellet of hydrogen, of deuterium and tritium, which are the heavy isotopes of the hydrogen atom. This pellet that was no smaller than a BB gun then was bombarded by these super powerful lasers, and the experiment actually didn't take into account the energy that they needed in order to ready the lasers. But still, a lot of scientists were saying that it was a really major advancement in fusion research. So now, instead of saying that nuclear fusion is 50 years in the horizon, now they're saying that perhaps it is just 20 years in the horizon. That will be, maybe by 2040 or 2050. We will start seeing the first nuclear fusion plants being developed for public the development of energy.
Yeah. Red Pill, did you end up writing about the smaller containment for cold fusion too that can contain heat that's like the size of a F-16 fuselage? I saw some different.
No, I didn't.
That. Okay.
I mean, cold fusion is this stuff that it's highly controversial.
Right.
I think 95% of scientists think it's just hogwash, a myth.
Mm-hmm.
Although I think that experiments in cold fusion are still taking place in very harsh, in a very quiet way.
Yes.
Some major universities. I personally don't put a lot of stock on the concept of fusion. I think, something might be happening in those experiments, but I don't think it can be scaled in such a way that I can actually represent an opportunity to produce the energy in large quantities.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, energy, clean food, clean water, these are all issues that become more urgent with the size of the population. And of course, the fact that so much stuff is misdistributed. You have people in third world countries starving, where you have people in first world countries throwing food out.
Yeah,
exactly.
So that's part of the issue. And there's just too damn many people.
Well, it's too damn many people, and also the fact that all those people are demanding more and more commodities, more and more energy.
Yeah. If we had another planet to build to, that would be great. Let's get Mars going.
Well, there's all this talk about helium-3 that will be readily available once we manage to start mining the moon.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. But like you guys said, there's all these contentions that China and other countries might start to claim that the moon is their property. So
I don't know.
Maybe,
yeah. I don't wonder if it's going to take asteroid mining, where it's really like, whatever flying rocks you can find, because there actually are a lot of, resources on them. If you could figure out and locate and get them, there'd be, I think, less of a proprietary sort of national thing on it. I don't know. I think it's something like The Expanse.
Yeah.
If you think about that.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what came to mind with the belters and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I remember that 10 years ago, there were all these stories about people like James Cameron getting involved with these space mining companies that wanted to do just that, start mining asteroids. But, nothing came of it. I mean, I guess they were ahead of their time, and the technology wasn't mature enough to start actually doing that.
Right. What else you got there? We got time for a couple more.
Okay, a couple more. We can talk about Ancient Apocalypse. The series that Graham Hancock released before the end of the year. That has been. You guys already did a show devoted to it, but I guess it's safe to say that has been quite controversial.
Yeah. I did not expect the type of controversy,
right?
Because there are people who are into this stuff who really hate Graham Hancock, which I did not know. The last time I checked, I thought most people had a pretty decent opinion of Graham.
Yeah.
And I was kind of shocked by some of the really vehement, like, oh, I really hate Graham Hancock type of stuff. And I'm like, huh, and as well as the racism, accusing him of racism and stuff like this that I just simply don't see. Just because you're saying there was an ancient culture at some point, that doesn't mean you're being racist.
Yeah. He was very careful to use, he kept referring to advanced civilization. And I thought that was smart, but I think sometimes we bring different meanings to that word.
True.
But, we live in modern civilization, right? But that's all over the world, at least in, economically advanced countries, right? And so I think that was one of those things that people read into. And then the other thing that I saw happening since we did the show is some groups that are racist were trying to link things back to like sort of manipulate Graham's points into fitting oh, there was an Aryan culture, kind of almost like getting back into some of the early theosophy.
But even theosophy wasn't talking about like white people.
No. But it's that manipulation again.
Yeah.
But and I said this on the show before too. I don't love Graham. I don't dislike Graham. I just try to take whatever he puts out there and digest it. And to me, it makes a lot of sense. I didn't feel like his the chip on his shoulder that people talk about was as bad as I expected it to be when I went in to watch the show. But I went to school for anthropology originally. I didn't finish my thesis, but a lot of the criticisms that he put out there were things that I agreed with. And anyhow, just to think that civilization has always been on a progressive trend of advancement to me just seems ridiculous. Obviously things happen, and sometimes things that are bad happen, and we've talked about asteroids already. If you had something that caused a cataclysm and rapid sea rise and climate change and what have you, you would have lots of people displaced. You would have a lot of death. And then you would have lots of people going back and forth between communities, between groups of people to try and rebuild the skills that they may have lost or they need to change because of the changing environment.
I would say at this point, the powers of be have been so successful at dividing the populace that even a conversation like that becomes political.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, but it's just information, it's ideas, there's no political agenda here.
Right.
And like one of you said earlier, we don't like the idea that there could have been a world-ending apocalypse within semi-historical times.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because you're looking at 12,500 BC.
Exactly. And, the idea of the Younger Dryas being caused by a comet or, whatever, some type of interstellar event is fairly accepted now.
It's getting there. It definitely is.
Yeah. I see a lot more people, in the academic community just, talk about it like, oh, yeah, well, I mean, it's such an offhanded, like, accepted thing. But you'll never hear mention Graham in that same sentence.
No.
Again, I already said this and, spouted off all my opinions on it in the show that we did. But his, I do think that you do have to take all of his research into context, or you don't. But I do think people look at the rest of his research and, when he goes into ayahuasca and the more spiritual aspects of things, and this has nothing to do with, any of the other issues of how he's dealt with certain indigenous folks in different places, which I actually don't know about.
Neither do I. I haven't heard anything about that.
Yeah. But I think that, all that other stuff that he's into, and I'm going to use the quote unquote woo stuff, because that's how it comes across, I think, to a lot of people. It turns them off from it.
Sure,
he's not like an Avi Loeb in that sense. He's really, and I think those are great things. I mean, that other stuff I find equally interesting. But it's I think that's one of the big things that seeps into it that a lot of like mainstream has issues with.
Oh, absolutely. Well, that and he's challenging their established paradigms.
Yeah.
And so is someone like Robert Schoch, who is a accredited Boston, University geologist. He's not just a journalist like Graham. This is a guy who can look at the rocks and say, yeah, this is what's going on here.
Who was the woman who was an archaeologist? This was several years ago, but I think you might have had somebody on. It was either her talking, or maybe it was on Conspiranormal. Maybe it's both. Where she was doing the research down near Punku, I think, in Teotihuacan, and she had come up with some dating, which put it back more along the lines of Graham Hancock's journalistic research. But she was essentially like her career was killed, blackballed. Yeah, I'm forgetting her name.
I didn't have her on. I know we've talked about that a few times. Yeah. But I think it was footprints. I think she had discovered footprints, and they were reliably dated to way beyond what humans are accepted to be in the Americas.
These are the famous Valsequillo footprints that were found in Mexico.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what. Maybe it wasn't Pumapunku. Yeah. Maybe it wasn't.
Yeah. So these were footprints that were left after a volcanic eruption. So in the ashes.
Yeah, so you can carbon date it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they were carbon dated. I think that first the first dating was around 50,000 years of age, which is obviously way older than what was, especially at the time. When still they were pushing the Clovis-Bering Strait theory.
Yeah, the ice corridor, 20,000.
Yeah. I think that after that, they did a second reading, and then it was worse because, in the sense that it was even older. They were talking that the second reading gave a date of 200,000 years.
Right. And the thing is, she did everything by the book, and she got blackballed.
Yeah. Yes. Right. And within the academy at the time she was doing it. Yep. Absolutely.
And something that happened with those footprints, and happens other places too, is you'll have creationists, evangelical creationists, use those to try and say, okay,
that's
real,
the problem.
But it actually means that our dating techniques are wrong, and so. By that association, it starts discrediting. You know what I mean?
Yeah. AP, you were going to say something?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, not me.
Oh, I thought I heard you start to talk. Sorry.
Yeah. Cremo talks about them a fair amount too.
Who did? Cremo. Yeah.
Michael Cremo. Yeah.
And that's the thing. Some of this stuff might just be dated wrong because our dating techniques aren't perfect. But to blackball somebody who played by the book and got, a specific date that they didn't like, that's not how science is supposed to work.
Yeah.
So, well, we are running out of time. Let's go around here. Let's see. AP, where can people find you?
You can find me at apstrange.com. I'm still on Twitter. Even though apparently there's a huge data breach there, and people's profiles aren't very secure.
Really?
But that's the latest news.
Isn't there like 10 people that works in the office on bunk beds or something?
Yeah, and like two of them are on vacation right now. They've got like one of those little like drinking birds hitting a button on a keyboard. So you can find me there. I'm on all kinds of social media, and I'm writing for Paranormality magazine these days. So there's a new issue out this month that has an article by myself. Hopefully writing more for the website as well soon.
Awesome. Red Pill.
You can find me obviously also on Twitter, also on Facebook, and also on my personal website, absorbedbydesign.com, and also at the Daily Grail, dailygrail.com, where you can find all sorts of great stuff. The Daily Grail is one of the oldest running websites dealing with paranormal stuff, paranormal news. and it is highly regarded by some of the celebrities in the field. They all read the Daily Grail.
Yes.
So go check it out.
The Grail is
And you can also
awesome.
be a Patreon. for
Grail's
the-
great. Yeah, there's a Patreon.
also-
for it, yeah.
Yes, we also have a Patreon, so if you can support us, we will greatly appreciate it.
Chris.
You can go to brightrectangle.com and here.
And your two movies, The Hill in the Hole and Corpse.
Hill in the Hole, you can go, and you can go to Trauma to find Trauma Now to find Hill in the Hole, and both of them on Amazon Prime.
And Super Inframan.
I am no longer on Twitter.
Oh.
Traitor!
I know. It just was too much for me. I am on Mastodon and Instagram, and you can always find me around the Discord for Where Did the Road Go as well.
All right. Thank you all.
Thanks, Trav.
Thank you.
Thanks.
There is a Patreon segment to go along with this that will be released to patrons later this week. Again, if you want to become a patron, it's only $3 a month. It helps us out immensely. You get extra stuff pretty much every week, and you get the shows 1 week in advance. And I will see you next time. You have been listening to Where Did the Road Go? This show is made possible in part from our Patreons, and we thank you and everyone listening for helping us continue this exploration of the strange. You can always find everything Where Did the Road Go related at www.wheredidtheroadgo.com. And thank you so much for your support.